Hello, everyone. This is Lauren Steiner from the Robust Opposition, and I'm really excited to be doing this show with you tonight on a very important subject dear to my heart, which is the climate crisis that we're facing. And it's a very interesting approach to the climate crisis done by a small North Carolina town that is not near where I live in Asheville. It's actually more near the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill area. The suit was filed in Orange County, North Carolina, not Orange County, California. And it accuses Duke Energy, who is the dominant energy provider here in the Carolinas, of intentionally spreading false information about the negative effects of fossil fuels for decades, despite knowing since the late 1960s about planet warming properties of carbon dioxide emissions. It claims the power company funded trade organizations and climate skeptic scientists who created doubts about the greenhouse effect and obstructed policy and public action on climate change. Quote, Duke misled the public concerning the causes and consequences of climate change and thereby materially slowed the transition away from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy. Duke's deception campaign served to protect its fossil fuel-based business model, the lawsuit reads. So with me to discuss this tonight are, let me see here, my guests, Jim Warren, who is the executive director of NC Warren, and a nonprofit here in North Carolina that does all sorts of things regarding climate change and the environment, and Mayor Barbara Foushee of the town of Carrboro, who is the town that did the suing. Barbara, you have to get off mute so that I can ask you the first question, which is, why did the town of Carrboro decide to sue Duke Energy?
First of all, I want to say thank you for this opportunity to be on your show. And to answer that question, this idea came forth not when I was mayor, but when I was serving on the Carborro Town Council, and former Mayor Damon Stiles was in the mayor's seat. An idea came to us from North Carolina Warren and the Center for Biological Diversity about an opportunity to be the plaintiff in a lawsuit to sue Duke Energy. Council members were very engaged around the idea, and we asked for more information about this potential lawsuit. And by the time we got that information, I was the mayor, and several seats on the council had changed over to other people. But the council as a whole stayed very engaged around the idea of suing Duke Energy Corporation for being deceptive in their work practices, and knowing what they knew when they knew it, and not being more forthcoming with community members and other stakeholders. And that's how the town of Carrboro got involved in the lawsuit with North Carolina. Well, we weren't with North Carolina Warren. I apologize. The town of Carrboro is the plaintiff. But we were supported, I would say, very well by North Carolina Warren and also the Center for Biological Diversity. That's how we got involved.
Yes, no, I worked with the Center for Biological Diversity fighting fracking in California. They're a very big player in this, and they've got a very good legal department. And Jim, whose idea was it between NC Warren and CBD to do this? Who got who involved, and how did you pick the town of Carrboro?
Well, I think, by the way, thank you very much for the opportunity, and it is an honor to be with Mayor Foushee again. This has been a very interesting, exciting past few months. I would say that there was common interest between the three different parties there. The town has done an admirable job over the years in taking the lead to address the climate crisis. And of course, as you mentioned, the Center for Biological Diversity and NC Warren have both been very involved in the climate crisis for many years. So it was sort of a natural alliance that came together there. And we are very honored to be assisting in the case.
And how did you put it together? What was involved in putting together this lawsuit?
I would say all of the parties have worked very collaboratively to figure out what are the key factors involved and whether this lawsuit would be strong and viable coming from the town of Carrboro. And it became, again, natural that given their track record of what has been done. We had all been looking at the other lawsuits around the country against other fossil fuel corporations. Duje Energy is a fossil fuel corporation, and by the way, one of the largest climate polluters in the world. And so it was quite a natural, since Duje is headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina, for these three parties to work together and to bring this forward.
Right. Well, Mayor, how did you decide what the damages would be? Do you have a numerical figure? Are you in the process of estimating that? And what do the damages cover?
Okay, so I think that we had a number that was right around $60 million. There had been, and I'm not sure exactly what the analytical or statistical model that was used to come up with the number. Of course, that was done at the staff level, town of Carrboro staff, but it had been being monitored over a period of years. And we thought about, some of the storms we had experienced. We thought about the intense heat that we experienced in the summer. And that brings us to stormwater infrastructure. We have a lot of flooding in our community and also a lot of road maintenance that has to be done. And when it's really hot in the summer, it does wreak havoc with the asphalt, the heat island effect there. So that's how we came to that number. We do expect the same to continue to occur as the earth warms more. We just experienced the hottest summer on record. The town of Carrboro is really very, very engaged, as Jim said, around climate change. Climate change is one of the pillars of our Carrboro Connects comprehensive plan. And we also are in the process of implementing our community climate action plan, which has many levels, as well as our energy and climate protection plan. And we've recently hired, our town manager recently hired our first ever chief sustainability officer. So we are deeply engaged in climate change and climate change mitigation.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because here in Asheville, we have a chief sustainability officer, and I came from Los Angeles in California, which is a democratically controlled state. I mean, they have a Democratic supermajority in the same way that North Carolina has a Republican supermajority. And I found out something I didn't even know about before, which is that some states are home rule, like California, and other states are what they call Dillon's rule, which is North Carolina, which has been explained to me as a mother may I. In other words, a local municipality cannot do something unless the state lets them, which I find extremely ironic, considering Republicans are all about states' rights, but they don't want to pass that concept on down to local municipalities, to the extent where I had naively suggested, well, maybe Asheville should start a rule like California where you can't have electric stoves. I mean, you can only have electric stoves. They said, no, the legislature will never allow us to do it. And then it got so bad to the point where last year, when Asheville was considering passing a plastic bag ban, the North Carolina legislature got wind of it, and they passed a bill saying municipalities are not allowed to pass bag bans. It's like spiteful, in the same way that Trump is basically getting rid of a lot of rules that Biden did. And we're going to get into that in the later part of the show. I know you're going to have to leave early, Barbara, but I'll talk about that with Jim. So tell me what Carrboro has been able to do in light of this North Carolina legislature we've just been talking about.
So a lot of what we've been able to do, of course, has just been here at the local level, primarily our advocacy work, implementing the community climate plans that I had mentioned to you. Energy efficiency is really big here in the town, as well as weatherization for some of the critical home repairs for some of our community members that are aging in place. We do have a stormwater enterprise fund that is supported by taxpayers to assist with stormwater infrastructure and education in the community. We are concerned about that fund because we have raised the amount twice already, but just the amount of money that we would need to cover what we need to cover here in the community, it's not there. It just would take a lot more money. Road maintenance, we do road maintenance periodically here in the town. Recently, when we did the most recent road maintenance, our public works department was able to kind of delve in a more environmentally friendly way of doing that road maintenance, which actually is really helpful to the environment and to the climate change mitigation cause. So there are certain things we are looking to have more EV electric vehicles with the town fleet. I'm sorry, my thoughts went away from me for a second. As well as hybrid. So we're also working on that. We have EV charging stations around the town. So there are, things that we continue to do and implement. And really, all that we do in the town of Carrboro, we really try to integrate climate change in all of that. So that's just kind of how we get around, what we know is the continuing erosion at the municipal level that comes from Raleigh, North Carolina, and our North Carolina General Assembly.
Yeah.
We're experiencing more of that in real time right now, as there was House Bill 171. It has nothing to do with climate change, but in a way it does. It's targeting DEI, right? So that was something that came out last week. And I think I read something else that at the federal level, maybe they're trying to get rid of a lot of EV charging stations. Did I read that somewhere?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was like thousands of them, and I'm just like,
they're literally taking them away for the government fleets in the same
that's what
way.
I thought, yeah.
In the same way that Reagan took the solar panels off the White House roof. But I actually read that he didn't do that to be spiteful. They had to repair the roof, and he never put them back.
He never put them back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not out of the kind of spite that Trump is doing it.
Yeah, it's just pretty amazing, what's happening right now. But we do plan to continue our work here in town. We're very invested in it. We believe in the work, and it really is embedded in all that we do here in the town of Carrboro.
Now, what has been Duke's response? Did they give a public response? Did they try to settle with you? Where does the case stand now?
So I'm not aware of any kind of settlement from them. The last update that we got from the attorney of record was that it landed in North Carolina Business Court.
Right.
And so I think there's supposed to be a hearing maybe in August of this year. We're supposed to be kept informed about that so that we can show up. But other than the initial public statement from Duje Energy Corporation, I've not heard anything else from them.
Right.
And so we're waiting for August and a good judge.
Now, what was
Yeah,
the initial public statement? Was it that typical, we can't comment on
right.
pending
Yeah,
litigation?
it was very middle of the road, and that they were checking their options or whatever. I don't quite remember it verbatim, but it was very middle of the road comment. Maybe Jim remembers a little bit more about it than me, but it wasn't anything memorable. Just
Yeah, it
just
basically,
a straight comment. We got it. Yeah, we're going to respond, kind of thing.
yeah, they got caught flat-footed, and you know what do you say? You've got a huge amount of public attention all of a sudden shining on this corporate activity that where Duke Energy was a ringleader of this nationwide conspiracy for decades, and they got caught. The legal complaint, which I really can laud attorney Matt Quinn, who has been NC Warren's attorney for years, and who is leading the legal case. He and with support wrote an excellent complaint that really spelled out just how bad and how appalling this corporate activity has been in the face of a situation where people are hurting. You know, the town of Carrboro, Mayor Foushee has spelled out some of the damages that have occurred there, and we look at communities around North Carolina, around the world. People are hurting. The climate crisis is accelerating. It's happening more quickly than scientists had believed, according to a new study by Jim Hansen and his team. And yet you've got corporate behavior that with Duke Energy, this corporation is still expanding fossil fuels, greatly expanding. Duke proposes to build more fracked gas fired power generation than any other utility in the country. And they are suppressing the growth of renewables. It is just so. What do they say to that type of record? So again, I really appreciate the importance of the mayor and the town taking the lead in calling this behavior out.
Well, you mentioned that it's going to business court. I assume that's because the basis of your suit is deceptive practices, and that sounds to me like, a business kind of court. But is that a better place for it to be, or is it? I don't know about the different courts where it could be heard. Are you pleased with that, or are you displeased that it's a business?
Oh, go ahead, Jim, and then I'll
Just
comment after you.
just to clarify, business court is a subset of the state superior court, so it is it's still effectively in the superior court, and I think I'll let the mayor speak for her feeling. We are just counting on the process moving forward and the judicial system working the way it should to shine light on and hold Duke Energy executives. By the way, we're not criticizing the Duke Energy rank and file.
Right.
This is about appalling executive behavior that stretches back 5 decades. And recently, we published a list of 4 of the most responsible executives, CEOs, and others who helped lead this nationwide conspiracy to avoid having our society address this climate crisis that is now devastating so many people.
You were going to say, Mayor?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Just to follow up with what Jim said, we did get an update from Mr. Matthew Quinn in closed session a few weeks ago. And he was very hopeful, which in turn made us hopeful about the way that the case is kind of progressing. And I think in his mind is progressing the way that he thought that it might. I talked a little bit about who the judge might be and the timeline. As I mentioned, the hearing could be as soon as August. And so we just continue to stay connected with him and get updates whenever he has one. And also, this is not about Duke Energy LLC, and that's something that I had to talk to a few people about. It is about the top executives at Duke Energy Corporation, and what they knew and when they knew it. One of the parallels that we have used throughout this process is tobacco companies, what they knew when they knew about
Right.
the harm that would come from smoking cigarettes, over long periods of time, and then subsequently the suits that came about as a result of that, and what the tobacco companies eventually said: yes, smoking is harmful. Yes, smoking will kill you. Eventually that came out, but it took these really large lawsuits to bring attention to the dangers of smoking, and it's the same here with the climate crisis. Some people just say, "Oh, it was just really hot last summer. Oh my God, it was just so hot." Well, I remember when I was growing up in rural Eastern North Carolina back in the 80s, we had no AC in my house.
Yeah.
You hear me? None. And in the summertime, we had fans. The windows were up, and we were okay.
Yeah.
Nobody got a heat stroke or anything like that. Now you try that today, you may end up in the ER, because this is a whole different kind of heat. It's global warming, right?
Yeah.
So it's climate change. And so I did just want to add that in, because I thought about summers in Duplin County when I was growing up, and just how it was then, and how we were able to keep ourselves cool with just like a fan, right?
Right.
But now, I mean, you won't be able to stand it. It's just, it's just way hotter, 40 plus years later. So, and it's attributed to global warming.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me that there's still people like Trump supporters that I speak to in my area here that continue to deny that there's man-made problem. They're just like, well, we had an ice age once before. All these things are natural. And I keep trying to tell them about the hockey stick and all the scientists, and then I start talking about scientists, and then they tell me I sound like an elitist. Like science is elite now.
I would encourage it, to the extent you get the chance, your listeners, viewers today, and all of these folks, to take a look at what the Duke Energy executives actually learned and knew themselves beginning in the 60s and 70s. And look, they can see that at stopdukeenergy.org,
Okay,
which is a
I'll
website that,
put that in the comments.
yeah, stopdukeenergy.org. And you can see where we have used their own words to show that, for example, in 1981, one of the Duke executives was part of a report that called CO2 a possible showstopper for fossil fuels. And this is when they began deciding to try to cast doubt on the science. And they did other things. They were warned in 1977 that the use of fossil fuels, quote, could increase the global temperature sufficiently to cause profound climatic changes. So people who deny the climate crisis, I think some of that, is sort of fostered or created, fabricated by those who want to keep us all divided. But people can just look around them, as the mayor said, that the heat is changing. It's gotten worse and worse. And sadly, too many people are still having to live without air conditioner.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you're suing the executives. Are you suing them personally? I mean, haven't some of these people died that promoted these, deceptive practices?
Well, I might just clarify, and I don't know if I misspoke, that we're pointing to the executives as the purveyors of this nationwide conspiracy, but the lawsuit itself is against Duke Energy Corporation, the parent corporation of all these utilities.
Right. You're just making the distinction because you don't want people to think you're blaming the workers.
Exactly.
Oh, no.
Exactly.
Not Duke Energy LLC. Nope.
Right.
It's at the top, where a lot of things start in a lot of different corporations. It's at the top.
Right. Well, I know you have to be somewhere at 6 o'clock, Mayor. So I guess I was counting on having you for a half an hour. Is there anything else you want to add to the viewers about this lawsuit, or is there anything they can do to help support the lawsuit, or maybe even start one in their own town?
Yeah, so I would just say, and I'm okay for, for the next 15 minutes if you want me to, to stay on, I'm okay for the next 15 minutes. But I think this is, I know when it first kind of popped off, it is truly and look to people like a David Goliath situation, because that's exactly, what it is, little bitty Carrboro, going up against the Duje Energy Corporation. But a whole nother angle that I have talked to people about as well is just bringing more attention to the climate crisis. By even being a plaintiff in the lawsuit, the very serious nature associated with that, and also the importance of it, as we try to educate more and more folks about the impact of climate change, because honestly, everybody is really not connected and educated on it, and connecting the dots about maybe something happening and why it's happening. And so, in my mind, the lawsuit has also brought good attention just to the climate change conversation in general. So that's one thing that I'm really pleased about.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, so I was going to save this question to the end to bring up with Jim. In the middle, I was going to talk to him about NC Warren and some of their other actions against Duke, and also kind of enumerate all the things that Trump has done in his shock and awe campaign of the last, month, specifically as it affects the environment. There is something Columbia University has. It's called a climate backtracker. And I posted it in the comments. There are over 45 things that he's done, from what you mentioned about getting rid of electric car chargers, not just for the government fleet, but completely stopping the infrastructure. Biden was going to put in, I think it was like $3 billion into expanding the infrastructure, so that when I go out to Raleigh, I always have to charge, and there's not a lot of options for me. So he was going to do that, and that's been taken away. There's been, he's rolling back the National Environmental Protection Act, which is like the landmark environmental law of this country from the 70s. Somebody was saying the other day that Nixon was the last liberal president because of all the liberal things that happened under Nixon, not because he wanted them, but because he was pressured by the people. There's an executive order called Unleashing American Energy, and of course it's all fossil fuels. And he's actually getting rid of all the clean energy initiatives to ramp up oil and gas. There were 400 employees that were just terminated at the EPA by Doge. He's doing little stupid things like banning paper straws because it was part of Biden's initiatives against plastics. He's phasing out the hydrofluorocarbon rules, the conservation standards on gas water heaters, the energy standards on walk-in coolers and freezers. He's halting all environmental justice work. He's expediting fossil fuel projects in Alaska. He's ended the pause that Biden had on the LNG export terminal applications. That stands for liquefied natural gas. Well, that's just a few of them. That's a lot. That's a lot in a month, right?
That's a lot. That's a lot.
And it's at the exact time when we should be doing the opposite of that, and Biden wasn't great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Biden approved the Mountain Valley Pipeline, the Willow Project, the Alaska LNG project, all these export terminals that are really a big problem, an environmental justice problem in the communities where they're being built, just like some of these plastic, they call them cracker plants for, fracking is now mostly fracking to get the oil to make plastic. So it's the worst scourge. But I was going to ask Jim, after enumerating all these things, that this is just in one area. I mean, you can take this, he's dismantling the entire federal government with the idea to privatize everything. And, we know what privatization does with public goods and services. So, I'm in all these different single issue groups, whether it's climate or Medicare for all, or, Palestinian rights, whatever they may be. And we've been having our calls, and I get on the call and I'm like, maybe this is kind of a crisis. I mean, some people are using the term constitutional crisis, and other people are just saying full-blown fascism we're going towards. And I'm thinking, like, unless we get out of our single issue silos and, deal with this onslaught as one group, come up with a Project 2025 of the left, if you will, then business as usual isn't going to cut it. Now, you're the mayor of a town, so you're involved with all of these issues. How do you see this coming to play in your town? I know that probably ICE and mass deportation is a big concern. What are your fellow council members suggesting you do as a local municipal government? What fears and action items are you getting from your citizenry?
So I've heard a little bit from my constituents here in town. I call this a human crisis because all the things that are being rolled back will impact all of us, at the human level, right? So people are anxious. They feel a lot of chaos, a lot of uncertainty, pretty much every day. I have not been able to exactly put my finger on everything that has been happening, because it happens one day and then the next day it's rolled back, it's challenged by a judge. It's just a lot going on. But myself, as well as my colleagues, as well as our town manager, Patrice Tony, we do keep abreast of everything that is coming out of Washington, D.C. Right now, what we're seeing as far as federal funds being frozen is maybe hiccups within some of our transportation projects. We did get an update on Tuesday night about our transportation projects, and there were several listed that could be impacted by some of the federal funds being frozen. And so also here in the community as it relates to ICE, so I am sure that there is communication from our county sheriff, as well as our police chief and our town manager. We know that the authority lies with the sheriff, and the sheriff can go anywhere within the county as it relates to ICE. Now, we've heard rumors, but none have been substantiated about any ICE raids here within our community. But we're all aware, and we're keeping our ear to the ground and sharing information and resources as it comes out. But it's the chaotic nature of the way things have happened that makes it hard for us to really have any teeth. So what I've decided as the mayor, and my council has been very supportive and agrees, is we will continue to operate here in the town of Carrboro as we have, providing day-to-day services to our constituency until we hear something different. When we hear something different, we'll communicate it. But right now, that is top of mind for us, because we're getting enough chaos and confusion elsewhere. And so right now, it really is about the safety and security of our community, and knowing that they have leaders that are here for them, and also to make sure that the services that they receive from us day to day are not interrupted or impacted, and they haven't been as of yet. So this is the position that we're taking right now.
Now, is Carrboro a sanctuary city?
No, the Carrboro is not a sanctuary city, but we do have a lot of immigrants within our community. We have not had an instance where we have had, anybody bust in, and left here, like some of the larger cities. But we do have a lot of immigrants that call Carrboro home. And so they are part of the fabric of our community. And so we are willing to step out for them and help them in any way that we can. And that is something that I know that myself and my colleagues are committed to doing.
Now, I know that Carrboro is a progressive community.
Yes.
So I don't know that you would have a barometer to tell if Trump supporters are now regretting their vote for him. But he's obviously gone beyond the things that he said he was going to do, or at least Musk is going beyond the things. And it looks like they may be going after Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. I don't know if you're hearing anything, or you, Jim, from.
Yeah, I'm not. I'll let Jim, talk, but I'm not hearing much of anything from people except, outrage. A lot of people are anxious, and just concerned because if folks feel unsafe, they feel unsafe, they feel uncared for. We have someone at the federal level that we can't count on, right? I mean, that's what it feels like, right? So we feel like we don't have anybody we can count on. And so I knew when he got elected, I knew that a lot would start to fall to the local elected officials for as much authority as we have. But just keeping in mind that our General Assembly, there's a little bit of erosion going on with municipal authority. I mean, it's happening, here and there, stepwise, but there is an erosion taking place with municipal authority, and so that's also something that we have to keep our eye on.
Who is your congressional representative?
Valerie, North Carolina 04 is Congresswoman Valerie Foushee.
Is related to you by marriage?
Yes, our husbands are related. Yes.
And what is she reporting back? Does she have town hall? Has she had a town hall yet with the constituents?
Yeah, I think I saw where she had a telephone town hall, and I know when she's in the district here, and I think she's been in the district this past week because I did see her at church this morning. But I've seen her just put out different reports on social media about some of the protests she's been involved in, and some of the things that she's hearing and witnessing on a day-to-day basis. So I think she's been reporting back, as much as possible where it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's a tough time to be an American.
It is. And if you're an elected official, it's also tough, particularly when you can't help your constituents the way you want to. I had one to email me about, and she was emailing for awareness. That she had lost her job with NIH. She was in a probationary status, and ended up losing the job. And she just emailed me for awareness, to just kind of talk about what that experience was and how it was making her feel. So we're being touched here, in various ways, and she's not the only one. There are many others out in the community that are in the crosshairs.
Yeah. Lauren, I might add a quick note there. There is a lot of pushback happening. I mean, the chaos has been moving so quickly. I mean, flood the zone strategy there. But there is a lot of pushback that's been organized by, for example, the Poor People's Campaign, to give them a shout out, and a lot of other progressive groups. But also importantly is that there are a lot of conservative people around the country, around the state, around our area that are starting to realize this thing is so out of control, and programs that are harming them are steaming forward too. So I think the Trump-Musk juggernaut has gone out. They stepped a little too far. Well, quite a bit too far, too fast in some ways, and to some extent, it's going to slap back on them, even from their own constituency, as people realize just what a mess they have made on most every front, including, as you started out with, the climate crisis.
Yeah, well, the Democrats haven't been pushing back as much as they should, and groups like Move On and Indivisible are now calling them out for being more of an opposition party. They're saying, why are you voting for any of their bills, like the Lake and Riley Act? Why are you supporting any of their nominees. You should have like a spokesperson. There should be a Democratic message of the day. But then you got people like Robert Reich saying, no, it's never been on the elected officials. You need movements. It's always been social movements that have created change. But we don't really have any leaders. I mean, the best leader we have is the guy I supported, Bernie Sanders, who at 83 years old is going around to Republican towns and starting to get the kind of crowds he used to get when he was running for office in 2016 and 2020. Why aren't younger, Democrats doing that? So we need leaders and we need to be in the streets. But then you hear, Americans don't have a tradition like they do in Europe of rushing into the streets. So I don't know what it's going to take, but I was listening to a podcast, the New Yorker podcast, and they said, whatever you do, you have to do it fast, because this fascism, if it consolidates and it gets people complying in advance, that's the key. And you see that, business leaders are, universities are, the press are. I mean, it's just very, very scary right now. And I just never thought I'd be living in these times.
Me neither. Me neither. I don't know. I think people are being driven by, some by fear, and then the election has divided people, and hard to have conversations with folks about issues that matter to all of us, right? So these issues matter to all of us, but the divisive nature, the fear, the anxiety, people are, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, just kind of how some folks are operating these days. Some days I don't know how I'm operating, because I wake up, it's like a bullet every day, but I took an oath of office, and I am here to serve and serve my community. And myself and my colleagues, that's what we intend to keep on doing. And, we just work it out, as it comes. But it's certainly a difficult time to be an elected official, a difficult time to be an American in general.
Well, I want to keep thank you for being on the show, and to say, please keep up the good work, keep up your stamina and your courage. You're going to need it. And I'll just close out, with a few questions to Jim about Duke Energy and other efforts that they have against them. So thank you, Mayor Foushee.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Take care.
Bye. Nice to see you, Mayor.
So yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
Have somebody like her in your community.
You bet we are.
So tell me, Jim, you have been fighting Duke Energy for a long time. How long have you been fighting Duke Energy? I know I had you on my show a couple of years ago when you were fighting their carbon plan that relies on, as you mentioned, more fracked gas, which they don't need to do since the cost of, solar and wind has come down. And we commiserated about, Roy Cooper's appointed Utilities Commission essentially siding with Duke. Right. And I think I asked you via email recently, had you thought about trying to get Josh Stein before, supporting him? Like, the best time to get commitments out of people is when they're running for office. Had you thought about holding his feet to the fire regarding Duke Energy? I know you have a campaign now asking him to urge Duke Energy to stop these fossil fuels and go with renewables. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we are optimistic that Governor Josh Stein will be quite different from Governor Roy Cooper. Cooper did a lot of good things on various fronts, but he stood by Duke Energy and helped Duke Energy greenwash the public for years, pretending that North Carolina is on the right track on a clean energy transition, when Duke Energy is doing exactly the opposite of that, expanding fracked gas as hard as it can and suppressing solar power in particular, and particularly at the rooftop, the local level, which is the fastest, cheapest, fairest way that we could be phasing out fossil fuels, by replacing with solar plus storage on buildings, parking lots, et cetera. But anyway, we are optimistic that Governor Stein is going to be quite different there. I mean, partly because the science just continues to mount to a truly disturbing level that the climate crisis is accelerating. The devastation continues. It's accelerating too. And we believe that the new governor can be the type of person who will stand up and be a champion and say, North Carolina can no longer continue to pretend that Duke Energy is helping us on the climate crisis, and we need Duke Energy to get on the right side and help show that one of the world's largest climate polluters can actually be persuaded, or coaxed, or required to phase out fossil fuels, to develop renewables more quickly, and help avoid the billions of dollars that Duke Energy has built into its business model to keep raising electric rates over and over and over again. That's the business model. So we are optimistic about Governor Stein. And by the way, people at stopdukeenergy.org, people can send the governor a contact encouraging him, people wherever the people live, encouraging Governor Stein to be the type of champion that we really, really need. You were talking about the national situation. Sometimes governors play at the national level, and we think that action by Governor Stein could put him in a very positive light in the national realm, especially if we could get Duke Energy to shift gears and change course.
Well, what actions or statements has he made that causes you to think he's going to be different?
Well, Josh Stein was Attorney General for 8 years before he became governor, and there he did stand up at times to various polluters, and he stood up to Duke Energy several times in challenging rate increases that were unjust, and in challenging the gas build out that we've been talking about, this expansion of fracked gas, and in challenging Duke Energy's effort to squash rooftop solar. So as Attorney General, Governor Stein has shown that he seems to be quite different from a Governor Cooper who stood by and helped pretend that Duke Energy and North Carolina were on the right track. So
well, what can he do besides, as you say, call for something? I mean, should he replace these people in the Utilities Commission to people who are not going to just do whatever Duke wants? I mean, is that one thing that he could do? Does he have the appointment power there?
Not that directly, but there are a lot of things that Governor Stein can do. The number one thing is to begin telling the people of North Carolina the truth, the business leaders, the residents, and everybody else, that we are on the wrong track in North Carolina on the climate crisis, and we simply have to shift gears and begin phasing out fossil fuels the way numerous scientists had called on Governor Cooper to do. Some of the most prominent scientists on the climate front globally are based here in North Carolina. Drew Shindell is one of those who, at Duke University, who has openly called on Governor Cooper several times to help lead a national moratorium against the expansion of fracked methane gas. And so, but the governor, the bully pulpit is the big one, but also the governor can use that to help create the statewide debate and discussion needed to do what you mentioned earlier, shine light and help people understand what it is we're facing. He can lead, he can call for and push for legislation. He can intervene as a governor in legal proceedings by the Utilities Commission. But he can also meet privately with the leaders of Duke Energy. He has that kind of stature. And what the Center for Biological Diversity and NC Warren and a lot of other organizations now are doing is building the positive support for Governor Stein to take that action, and to have organizations and businesses to sign on the open order that is on the website. help people understand that these repeated hurricanes and heat waves and other things that have been devastating parts of this state are being caused by decades of deception by corporate leaders that have pretended nationally and in North Carolina that everything's not so bad. It's not their fault that we have a climate crisis. But this is a situation where the UN General Secretary or Secretary General last year said we are facing a highway to climate hell, and he pinned the blame on the corporate and political leaders who have not taken serious enough action. And he called the fossil fuel leaders the godfathers of the climate crisis. And
well, we got a climate denier right here watching the show. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah,
got a nice American flag in his profile. What do you want to tell this guy?
well, I would just say go to stopdukeenergy.org and read through some of the things that Duke Energy's own leaders have said over the years, and look at on ncwarn.org, and you can find 4 open letters by prominent scientists calling on Governor Cooper and at times the CEO of Duke Energy to phase out fossil fuels, because the thing with methane, as you know, Lauren, it is super potent as a heat trapper.
Yeah, it's 86 times more potent a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide.
Exactly. So expanding the drilling and piping and burning of fracked gas in this era is madness. It really is.
Yeah. Well, you and I agree, but there's people out there that don't even believe scientists. You see, he used the term so-called climate science. Yeah, go on.
Right. Well, by the way, in the complaint, you can see the way Duke Energy leaders used fringe scientists, people who did not even have scientific credentials, but Duke Energy and other utilities paid them to go around the country and around this state to sow doubt about the climate crisis. And then as it became clear that the crisis is underway, then to try to do what the tobacco industry said, well, it's not our fault.
Yeah.
That so many people in that case were getting cancer and all, and Duke Energy, and then in recent years for Duke Energy to claim that it is a climate leader, a transition to clean energy leader, and it's just nuts. But this gentleman that wrote in can go there and see the actual climate scientists, so-called scientists that were hired by Duke Energy to block activity to protect their own fossil fuel interests.
Here he is, the hoax. Donald Trump used that exact word, hoax.
Yeah.
This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people that they're not educated. They don't employ critical thinking. They don't have media literacy. They don't understand who's behind the media that they are listening to.
And they are, I'm sorry, they also are in the small minority, because most people across the political spectrum get it, that we have a climate crisis. In fact, I know that there's a group in North Carolina called Conservatives for Clean Energy. They operate in several states, but they've done a statewide poll of voters for 5 or 6 years in a row. And every time it shows a huge majority of voters from across most of the political spectrum calling for more competition, because we don't like monopolies like Duke Energy. Most of us across the spectrum, they call for more clean energy, fewer rate increases. So, the gentleman who's writing in is part of a small minority, and we need to be working on those who do realize that we've got to take action and move out of and get off of this climate, highway to climate hell that Mr. Gutierrez has called it.
Yeah, well, we're going to end on a positive note, and I'm going to harken back to the Georgia Tea Party. You might remember during the Obama years actually saved solar energy there because so many of their small businessmen were involved with solar companies.
Yeah.
And similarly, we have a lot of Republicans who are quietly trying to urge Trump, but not too loudly because they don't want to be primaried by a MAGA, candidate. They're trying to quietly urge Trump because Biden was smart. He put a lot of these Inflation Reduction Act programs in Republican states to be an economic stimulus and a jobs provider. So these Republican governors are saying, not so fast here, you know. So that's a very good deal, and hopefully that will prevail. Well, Jim, I want to thank you so much for being on the show now a second time. And we really appreciate all the work that you do for the environment and for the climate here in North Carolina. And hopefully, if we keep fighting, we will win.
You bet. Groups have won against big corporations a lot of times over the years, including Duje Energy.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.